My name is Stephen Baden. I'm an analyst here on the New York desk, and I'll be taking you through the outlook today. Just something I want to say before we get started. All the slides and the recording of this will be sent to you afterwards, and unless stated otherwise, all the data that you will see will be on peak average, day ahead, and all the temperatures will be in Fahrenheit. We'll start off with the agenda. First, we're going to do a winter look back, just a review of Genscape's expectations for the winter, what actually happened, review the temperature anomalies we saw, some of the polar vortex, the record high gas prices that we witnessed, and review of the imports, mainly from HQ and PJM. Then we're going to get along to the spring outlook, go over the demand expectations that we forecasted, some of the generation outages that we're seeing, deep dive of the nuclear refueling, possible zone A congestion, transmission outlook, and then a brief summary. So looking back at the expectations, going into the spring, Branchburg Ramco was out of service. We forecasted his return would bring in higher PJM flows. While it did return, PJM flows did not pick up as PJM was squeezed by gas prices. Actually saw quite a big decline of PJM flows year over year. And then a review of the imports from AC. As we pointed out in the winter outlook, there was a possibility that flows from the north would get shut down during periods of cold weather. That did occur. It was the lowest HQ imports over the last 3 years average, and it was driven by some sub-zero temperatures up in Montreal. There was a recent infrastructure upgrade to the New York Manhattan gas pipeline. Transco Z6 New York expanded some of its pipeline there. We forecasted that would keep Z6 prices down, and however would not affect Algonquin, and we would see some pretty high Algonquin over Transco Z6 spreads. Now, while Algonquin was priced above Z6 for the majority of the winter, the increase into flow into Manhattan did not keep prices low, as New York was squeezed from just about every gas hub, as we saw some record-breaking prices. And then, of course, forecasted some below-average temperatures to drive some strong load and some weather anomalies across the entire Northeast. The event known as the polar vortex drove extremely high low temperatures, including one record-breaking day in January. So just another way of looking back at the winter here. Here we have the main drivers broken out: load, gen, transmission, gas, and imports. As you can see, a number of bullish drivers day over day and extremely high prices, or I'm sorry, year over year, extremely high prices for the winter year over year. Load record-breaking, as we said. Gas also record-breaking, weaker imports. So here is a look back of the temperatures over December, January, and February for the winter. As we can see by the map on the top left, below average temperatures across all 3 months. December ended up being the mildest. Very cold January. January 7th saw that record-breaking winter load number, and that was driven by a polar vortex event. Then February, we continued to see well below average temperatures. This graph here represents the spread, the min and the max, and the average price for Zone G throughout the winter. And it's displayed year over year, blue being this most recent year, green being last year. Now this graph is set up by load there on the x-axis. So while we know load is a primary driver of price, what we can see through this graph is that at pretty much every load level, prices were higher, both on average and through the max of the on-peak period year over year. So clearly load isn't the only driver of price and the reason that we saw some of the record-breaking prices that we saw this winter. So jumping into that, here we have a display of heating degree days. Now to calculate a heating degree day, you take the average temperature for a day and subtract that from 65. So if the average temperature on a given day is 40 degrees, that would be a heating degree day value of 25. So again, we see that December was the mildest. However, we see a large increase in heating degree days year over year for January and February, especially out in the Buffalo area. Pay special attention to the middle graphic and the extreme increase in heating degree days for PJM and that Pennsylvania. That is for January. So heating degrees will drive gas demand and load, but here we have graphically displayed the 4 major gas hubs across the Northeast, Z6, Z2, the New York gas hubs on the top, and Algonquin and TECO 1-3. And we can clearly see that year over year there was a massive increase in gas prices, and that was driven due to the massive increase in heating degree days. Going into imports, here we have a view of HQ imports day over day, or I'm sorry, year over year. So we can see that the deltas were down quite a bit from the 3-year average. And then displayed graphically, we can see that when the temperature there in red is sub-zero for an extended period of time, we actually exported to HQ. We can see there it got to about 700 megawatts on peak average for a given day. And that's very bullish for the New York ISO. Now going out to PJM. Again, it was the lowest PJM imports for the last 3 years, driven by very bad spreads. You can see that on the top right for January. And in the bottom left, we can see the effect of the gas increase that we saw in PJM. We can see that the percent delta year over year is much larger for PJM, so the effect of the increase in gas prices really hit PJM a lot harder than it hit New York. In the bottom right, we can see the spreads between the Keystone and the NYISO buses mapped out graphically. On January 21st there, the Calvert Cliffs nuclear station, 1,700 megawatts in PJM, tripped offline. That drove extremely high prices in PJM, and then we saw a big pullback in PJM imports because of that. So that's the end of our winter look back. So we're going to get into the spring outlook now. So spring is a shoulder month. We don't expect any extreme temperature or extreme weather patterns. We can see here it looks like we're going to be a little below normal if you were to average out the 3 months. But we don't expect weather to be a big price mover throughout this period. We will be looking for the demand curve to change from a double peak to a single peak as we move from a winter demand curve to a summer demand curve. And that's just going to be driven by the heating load turning into cooling load. And it's going to start a little later in the day and then continue to drive through the afternoon into the evening. And then the later bump in the evening will be much less distinguished and move back a couple hours as lagging load decreases. Here's a look at the scheduled outages we have for New York. As you can see, there's quite a bit of base load on outage. As it is a shoulder month, this is to be expected. And with this base load out, we're going to expect slightly higher heat rates. And as you can see, the most base load is out in April. Here's a list of all the nuclear outages for New York, New England, and PJM. Highlighted in red is the New England nuclear outages. These are the only 2 nuclear units in New England, and you can see that they overlap. One goes out on April 1st, the other goes out on April 5th. So while both those units are out, we're going to look for quite a bit of strength coming out of New England and probably some increased exports. You can see the New York outages in green and then PJM in blue there. Deep diving into the New York outages, we have 9 Mile 2, which is currently on outage, 1,300 megawatts located in Zone C, scheduled to be out until April 21st. So historically, we're expecting to see 9 Mile 2 return slightly before the outage in the real time. You'll see it listed in the NRC report. And we're going to watch it run in the real time for a few days before it bids into the day ahead. Wait for a good NRC capacity report before we expect it to bid in. And when it does bid in, we expect it to bid in aggressively, meaning it's going to bring the entire unit in rather than bring it in incrementally. Ginna is the second nuclear power outage in New York, scheduled to be out from April 25th to May 22nd. It's about 600 megawatts, a little less than half the size of 9 Mile 2, located in Zone B between Bissinger East and West Central interfaces. And it's going to follow a similar pattern as 9 Mile 2. We're going to see it run in the real time slightly before its outage, and then expect to wait a couple days before it bids into the day ahead. And when it does bid in, we're going to look for the entire unit to come in aggressively. Going out to an expectation for imports exports for the spring outlook, we're going to look for some decreased PJM imports. Below is a graph of what we saw last year. And something that we want to highlight is that we do see that Huntley 67 is going on a planned outage in mid-April to mid-May. Now, with Huntley on outage, that greatly increases the risk of zone A congestion. And if we expect weakened, if not exports, to PJM, then that is a very bullish risk environment for zone A. So we will be looking for a little bit of zone A congestion to pop up sometime through April, May, and that will correlate with the Huntley outage. Here's a list of all the transmission, or what we feel are the major transmission outages that will be affecting the New York grid coming up for the season. Looks like there will be some Central East derates, just a few hundred megawatts, nothing substantial. We are expecting load to remain relatively low. So with load staying down, we do not believe that this will drive congestion every day, but in a high load environment, we could see this, these Central East derates start to sense some congestion. The biggest derate will be the Marcy South derate from the 22nd to April 4th. That's going to send some downside D. And then we are also watching the Homer City Water Cure outage, as that will derate the PJM AC. And unless PJM flows, will just be bullish the entire grid. So in summary, what to expect this season, we're going to be looking for that transformation of the demand curve. And outages are going to be the major price mover day over day, especially the base load, and we're going to be watching the nuclear units very carefully. We're going to expect some weak PJM imports, and that's going to bring with it a possibility of zone A congestion. We're going to be watching the long-term transmission outages, but due to low load, we do not believe that will drive too much congestion. And then just speaking about congestion overall, we will be expecting less Central East just as the gas basis narrows and decrease exports out to New England. So we will be looking for less Central East as a price driver day over day. And as we get towards the end of May and we see an increase in thunderstorms, we start to get the possibility of TSAs, and that will cause some Pleasant Valley leads congestion, which will be bullish GJ and K. And that is it for the spring outlook. We'll wait around for a little bit. If anybody has any questions, you can type them into the box there, and we'll answer them for you. All right, we got a question about the New England exports and what our forecast is for that. As the gas basis declines and Algonquin sinks below the rest of the other gas hubs, we do expect exports out to New England to pull back a little bit. But as I stated on a previous slide, New England does have both their nuclear units out starting in early April. And during that time, we are going to be looking for some strength in New England, and we'll see slightly above seasonal averages for exports out there. But once those news comes down, we are going to be looking for some more imports from New England. And doesn't look like we have any more questions, so that'll wrap it up. As I said previously, we will be emailing this out to everybody, so you will all get a copy. And thanks for joining me. Bye.